Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show today. We are going to have a great show for you today. In fact, we have a special guest who wrote or put together a hell of a documentary. We are going to go through that in a little bit. But before we get started, I want to remind folks that this is a show on both Blog Talk Radio Pacifica Network as well as on Facebook Live. And for those of you that are on Facebook Live, the first thing that we need you to do based on the algorithm that's going through on Facebook is to go ahead and share. And why do we have to do that? Because if you want to hear the progressive message these days, that is what you have to do. We have to take responsibility for our own education. Anyhow, we are going to have a wonderful program for you today. The title of the program is Director Steve Mims Talks About Documentary About Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. Now, folks, for any one of you guys who've been watching the race, it is real. Some people for a very long time have been taking it for granted, not thinking it is real. Welcome aboard, Chase Escamilla. Welcome aboard, Michael Dean Newton, and anybody else that I miss, I do forgive me. But anyhow, subtitle of the show, Director, Editor, Cinematographer Steve Mims discuss his documentary Run Like the Devil, which chronicles the Texas Senate race between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. Now, the Texas Senate race between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz is too close to call. At this stage of the game, everyone knows Ted Cruz. Beto O'Rourke is still not as well known. He visited all 254 Texas counties, and as more people learn about him from the cities to the counties to the rural areas, his appeal continues to grow. That appeal continues to grow. And if you take a look at when you go and look at the film that our director here produced, you'll see how it progressively gets better anyhow. And this is reflected in the polls. Because Ted Cruz is known entirely, or rather is a known entity, his growth potential is limited. Beto O'Rourke has growth potential, or you know what? He has monumental growth potential. He has masterfully defined himself before the right was able to do so. Luckily, his effective grassroots campaign ensured he had both the money and bodies to do that. Today, I'm honored to have film director Steve Mims, who created the documentary Run Like a Devil that chronicled the current state of this vibrant Senate race. His documentary is completely non-ideological, and it was a distinct pleasure to watch. So, folks, he's going to give you some information on how you can go watch that documentary as well. But I can tell you, having watched the entire thing, it is a documentary that folks need to go out there and see, and it's right here in Houston in the next week. The work of commercial director and independent filmmaker Steve Mims has screened internationally. Starving the Beast documented the defunding and reform of public universities across America. His 2016 political ad, Please Re-elect Gerald, won numerous awards, including a Lone Star Emmy Incendiary. The Willingham case won the South by Southwest Louis Black Award, the Innocence Network Journalism Award, and the Texas Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty Media Award. Mims earned his bachelor's degree at the University of Southern Mississippi and his master's at, you know where? The University of Texas. So we have two Longhorns on the line right here. After the discussion with Steve Mims, we'll go to the blog of the week to have an interesting take on John McCain. Welcome aboard, Steve Mims. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first of all, before we even get started about the meat of your documentary, what got you into wanting to follow Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz around?
Well, back in 2012, when Ted Cruz won his Senate seat, I was watching what happened in that race between Paul Sadler, who's the Democratic nominee, and Ted Cruz. And, that was an unusual race because Ted Cruz just barely beat the guy, I'm beginning to blank his name right now, this Republican.
Right.
The guy who should have won that.
I know
anyway,
that
he won that race.
Right. I think he was the lieutenant governor here in Texas.
Right. David Dewhurst.
He beat
exactly.
David
Dewhurst. He got the nomination. Then it came down to the general election, and I had watched what had happened then. And at that time, I didn't think I knew enough about either Paul Sadler or Ted Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
Although I had filmed Ted Cruz 2 years earlier at a Tea Party rally.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first exposure to him. That made a big impression on me. And that's actually in the movie. There's a scene from that rally in there where he speaks. And
you said
anyway,
it made a big impression in you. Why did it make a big impression in you when you saw Ted Cruz?
It was the behavior of the people there, I have to say. Like, it was very, this is a period where it was 2 years after Obama came in. It was really a big anti-Obama rally.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an Obamacare rally. And people were very frank about it. And there are elements of that thing that are in the film that are just I didn't think that were normal. But I don't want to, people should see it and make their own judgment
Absolutely.
about it. But it was uncomfortable,
mm-hmm.
My experience there. And so when the Sadler-Cruz race happened, I tried to reach out to people to try to see about, like, trying to get information out about both those guys, and nothing happened. And so I guess maybe almost 2 years ago now, I picked up the paper and read that Beto was going to announce his run in El Paso. I went out there for that event, for his announcement, and I filmed that, and I just started filming then, and I've been filming up until the last thing I shot was August the 2nd
mm-hmm.
of this year. So it's been a long process of shooting and editing. And actually, I shot a little bit before then because after the Trump election, there were many, many protests in Austin. And so I went and filmed some of those. And I did this on my own, the same way I did the Tea Party thing in 2010, because I felt like, well, this is history. I don't know how it's going to be useful, but I think it will be useful. And that's all paid off very well. Like, I shot a White Lives Matter protest and a No Ban, No Wall protest. And so all that stuff found its way in the film because it's all part of the period that we're living in that has really set up this race to be something a lot more complex and dynamic than people had assumed it was going to be.
That is a very salient point. Why don't you kind of explain what you mean by that? I followed that. I followed where the direction you're taking the film. What do you really mean by that? What's so special about the state of our politics, and it's deeper than politics, but the state of the country itself right now?
Yeah, I think that people are totally saturated in really toxic, a bile, that,
mm-hmm.
and I think that's a nonpartisan perception. I think, like, even people who might be Trump supporters probably deep down didn't know they were signing up for this ongoing drama that's just so that is about the worst of people and not the best of people. And I really think that's taken a toll. And I think that that there's going to be a response to that. I think that's what we're seeing. Not only, I think Beto has done the actual labor of getting all over the state, like traveling the whole state and like working himself to death. And I think, so he's made his, they say you have to make your own luck. He's really made his own luck, and it's been from just working his ass on. But the other part of it is, simultaneously, this Trump thing has been unfolding, and it's just not pretty for anybody.
Right.
And I think there's a deep sense of, something that's got to change. And I think I think in this case, the Cruz Beto campaign, both sides are sort of using that energy, right? They know that the Republicans are trying to boost their base by saying we have to defend ourselves from people that want to change everything, and the Democrats are saying we have to change everything. And so it's an honest, really honest debate.
Right. Go ahead. Continue.
So I think that's the thing that we're living through that's really changing the nature of this particular race.
Now, as it turns out, you've been embedded in both of these campaigns. You've been able, because there's a hell of a lot of video from all of them. Tell me a little bit about the feeling about the I don't know the word that I want to use, but it's not the ambiance, but tell me a little bit about what you've noticed within each particular environment. Does both of them seem to believe they're winning, or does one feel they have their back against the wall? Or tell me about how you feel about when you're embedded within both of these campaigns.
I think that I don't get the sense that either campaign thinks that they're winning. And I interviewed Mark Mccain for the documentary.
Right.
This is not in the documentary, but he was telling me that that Ted Cruz knows the secret to winning a campaign, and the secret to winning a campaign is you either run unopposed or you run scared. And he said that Ted Cruz is going to run scared, and I have a little bit of that in the film, but meaning that both campaigns know it's all on the line. And
right.
So neither one of them have really let up. And Beto has the advantage of starting a year before Ted Cruz. He announced on March 31st, 2017. Cruz officially announced right around April the 5th, 2018. And so that labor, that energy that Beto invested has really kind of helped bridge the gap that people thought was unbridgeable. And that, along with the festering Trump stuff, has really kind of turned this thing into a real race. But I think that they both realize how hard they have to work, and their campaigns are both working hard. I think the nature of their campaigns is totally different. And that is, so I filmed more with Beto than Cruz, because Beto's wasn't going for a year before Cruz ever got started.
Right.
But Beto's events are totally wide open. You'll go and people just flood the place, and he is, an open candidate, talking to everybody, staying away. And Cruz is like that to some degree, but his events usually are, at least the ones we cover, were smaller, and you had to sign up online to get in. I don't know if they're still doing that now, but it was a different approach to it that's a little bit more cautious on the Cruz side and less so on the O'Rourke side.
Yeah, I've covered quite a bit of Cruz events, and the Cruz events are generally very structured and closed. I don't know if you know, the Tea Party is big in the part of Texas that I'm at, called Kingwood, Texas, which is the suburbs of Houston. And what you find is the Tea Party is very strong out here. And when Ted Cruz come into town, it is well organized, and there are a lot of watchful eyes out there. In fact, sometimes when some of my Tea Party friends see me out there, they kind of escort me quite early on. So it's pretty it's pretty interesting out here. But now you went through the entire state. You've been to all the different counties, or to quite a few of the counties that Beto has been going through, as well as Ted Cruz, correct?
Well, we didn't go to all 254 counties. We went to a lot less than that. It's hard for me to know how many places. I mean, I could figure it out, but we probably filmed Beto in maybe 7 different locations, probably. And then Cruz, we filmed in probably about 4 events over the period that we had to shoot. And so I've been, I was at the 254th county up in Gainesville, which is almost in Oklahoma. And for instance, that was on a Saturday, middle of the day, it was super hot, and the place is packed. And that's the very red part of the state. It's amazing. And then we're down in San Antonio. We've been within over in East Texas, Nacogdoches, Tyler, Austin, whatever. So we did what we could, but that was never going to be, and you've seen the movie, so like, it was not just going to be a movie about what's unfolding.
Right.
It's going to be a movie about who these guys actually are, like from birth until now, like a real picture of them, like how they got to be who they are. And then, some of the more important issues that we could get to in the film. So we never were gonna make a movie that was just all about the day-to-day campaign.
Right.
We have a lot of that in there.
Well,
and
I mean,
we've got the beginnings.
Yeah, that came across very clean. I can tell you that. I mean, it was representative because you got to the different types of places that Beto went and the types of different places that Ted Cruz went to as well. Now, tell me a little bit about because you're talking about that very red area that you went that had a packed house waiting for Beto O'Rourke. Did you find that packed house was monolithically Democratic, or was it a whole lot of Republicans trying to see things are so bad, let me see what this guy looks like, and potentially converts?
Well, there were people there who had T-shirts that said "Republicans for Beto."
Oh, interesting.
And I've seen those around. Yeah, that's not. I didn't get a shot of that in the movie, but there are people wearing that. I think that's been the case everywhere. We were in a little town, Brady, Texas, and there was a woman who spoke during the Q&A with Beto, and she said, well, a lot of people said that. She says, when I vote in the primaries in Texas, I have to vote Republican because, and this is the case in a lot of these rural towns, there is no Democratic option.
Right.
Right. There's nobody running on the Democratic side. And so if you live in a little town like Brady, it's tiny, and there are 3 people running, and in a town like that, people actually know people, right? They know their family, they know all their backstory. So if you're going to have a voice in which one of those guys gets to be your county or whatever, you're going to have to vote in the Republican primary.
Right.
And so there were people there, and I've heard this before, who said, like, I had to vote in the Republican primary because I had to vote for my local guy. But when it comes to general elections, I'm gonna vote for Beto O'Rourke. That's a very real phenomenon, and because there are plenty of people, objectively, that are not fans of Ted Cruz who are Republicans.
Right.
And so it's really fascinating to me.
Now, let me ask you, and then before I go into asking you about how people can actually see the film, both here in Houston and subsequently other places, because this is a national show and it's also listened all through Texas as well, so we may want to tell folks other places they can listen to. But what's your gut?
I really hesitate. Like the reason I'm hedging about this is, one of the first questions I usually get asked is, how can a guy who lives in Austin, Texas, make a documentary about this race and it's not some left-wing propaganda?
Right.
And so I have to get into a discussion about, like, well, I can see how people would assume that, but we did everything possible to make the film as nonpartisan as we could make it. Just lay out the facts, let people like do what the great thing about documentary, to be able to see not only what people say, but how they say it and the nuance of how they do it and how they comport themselves and whatever. So that's important. So I'm hesitating to say what my gut feeling is about it. And I don't know, I would always discount my gut feeling. I think that I'll put it this way though, I think that the conventional wisdom has been nothing but wrong on this race.
Right.
And the same people, I've been having conversations. I have Republican friends. I've had conversations with them all year, and they would go like, "Oh yeah, you're one of those people that still believes Beto O'Rourke can win." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I do believe that." And I think now those people are changing their tune a little bit, and I think that you can just objectively say it's because of what's happening in the polls. It's also kind of a zeitgeist thing about what's happening in the country. And so, while I hesitate to like state a gut feeling, I think that objectively you can look at it and go like, this is not, as you said in the intro, it's not an impossible thing.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see what the next poll says. You know, like
Right.
we'll see how this momentum is shifting.
We'll see, because now they're also there are now ads by both sides on TV all throughout Texas. There was a caller earlier on that hung up. Caller, if you're still there, just go ahead and make a call. I think you're a Skype caller. I'll take your call I'll hold on to Steve a bit longer if you have a question for Steve to ask about the movie. So give us a call back at 646-716-5812. Again, we'll come to you shortly. Yeah, Steve. Now, as far as I great answer first of all, and I think I think it's the right answer. I mean, it's all nebulous right now, but the thing about it is, the funny thing about it is, Donald Trump made Beto, or rather, Ted Cruz and his crew are trying to make some of a few bad things that Ted Cruz that O'Rourke did a few years ago when he was a young man in his early 20s. Have an effect. But sadly, because of who these folks were willing to elect as president, those things kind of pale in comparison to the bad deeds of the person that's actually president of the United States, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, I was laughing about it. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Like, if we use the standard of Donald Trump, Beto deserves to hire 2 hookers. So he's owned up to the DWI, and said what a terrible mistake that was. Mm-hmm. And then the other burglary thing, he jumped the fence at the University of El Paso, UT El Paso.
Right.
That's nothing compared to, you've got the commander-in-chief, potentially who will be a felon eventually, and who absolutely, by moral, ethical standards, is, So the irony of that, that you would now, in this environment, go like, well, the guy got arrested for drunk driving. It's like, well, that's one of the best things about America. Like, anybody can get arrested for drunk driving. And I'm always reassured by that when I read about some celebrity who gets arrested. Like, it's a great country where.
I tell you what, Steve, let me get a caller in, because I think there's somebody on the line. Caller from 347. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and hit the number 1, because right now you're just here, but I don't see it that you've hit the number 1 to say you want to speak. Okay, they fell off the line. Let's see if they'll call back. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. If you want to speak, we'll get you on before Steve, the director of Run Like the Devil, which is the kind of chronicle the Cruz O'Rourke campaign and the people themselves. I tell you what, why don't you give the proper description of what your documentary is all about, and also how can folks get around to see it?
Yeah, well, the film is really about the 2 candidates. It's a big chunk of it is a biography of Ted Cruz, and another part of it is a biography of Beto O'Rourke. It's also about how we came to this place in terms of the power or lack of power between the Democratic and the Republican Party in Texas. So there's a little history part to set that up. And then the final part of it is about some of the major issues that people are focused on now as it relates to this election. And so we try to set it up like, it's a very simple structure. It's like, here's how we got here. Here are the 2 candidates. Here are some of the most passionate issues. And then now it's time for people to do something, to vote, and depending on how they feel about all those things. So we're just trying to lay it out as honestly as we can, and to give people an authentic understanding of those guys.
And what I have to say about...
So that...
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, what I want to say about it for those, whether you're, because we have both conservatives and in as much as we're a progressive show, we have quite a bit of conservatives and progressives that listen to the show. But I watched the entire show, the entire documentary. And one of the reasons I was trying to also discern where you stood on the platform and I couldn't figure that out. So that just means it was a well-made documentary, and just by name, it was a documentary and not some sort of a propaganda engine for either side of the of the equation for either one of these senators. So I'm telling folks right now, it was a very well done documentary that it can actually help you make a decision as well, depending on how you think. I mean, it's a very good documentary on Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. Now, how can folks, first let me say, I'm speaking to director, editor, cinematographer Steve Mims, who is the director of Run Like the Devil, and I think you filmed it as well, which chronicles the Texas Senate race between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. Tell us how folks can get to that documentary and see it.
Well, the most comprehensive information is at our website, and it is runlikethedevil2018.com, runlikethedevil2018.com, and that has all the information about the movie, and it lists all the screenings. But the first one in Houston will be next Thursday night at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. The film actually premieres this Thursday in Austin at the Austin Film Society Cinema. That show's already sold out, but there's a show on Friday, and they've added more shows over the weekend. And then the film is going to play in Nacogdoches on Sunday afternoon, and Tyler on Monday. And then we're in Huntsville, in El Paso, in Lubbock, in Dallas, in Fort Worth, in Wichita Falls, in McAllen, in the Valley. We're trying to show it as many places as possible. And people also, if you're interested, and this is true all over the nation, if you want to screen the film at a theater in your town, we have a program that's done by a company called TUGG, T-U-G-G, and it is an on-demand theatrical service. So if you have a group and you say, I would like to see this documentary in Abilene or whatever, you can go to the website, create an event, and when there are enough people that sign up for it, it happens.
Wow.
And so we can show the film theatrically anywhere in Texas and actually anywhere in the country. So all that stuff is at the website. And again, the web address is runlikethedevil2018.com.
I'm going to make sure to, after the show is over, I'm going to make sure to put that in the show notes so that people can get to go ahead and see exactly where they can see it. Well, look, it was my pleasure having you here to speak about your documentary. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we close this segment out on the documentary, or absolutely anything within our body politic?
I just want people to vote, and again, the reason I want to work on the film is to create something that would actually be beneficial, that would have some utility for people. And I have to say this, my bet was at the beginning when we started it that nobody else is going to do this. And sure enough, nobody else has done it. It was just kind of amazing. Like, we have all these television stations, we have, public television, we have whatever. And to my knowledge, nobody's made a movie like this yet. When it's like, you would think that in a democracy that, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but you would think in a democracy that there would be multiple competing versions of the information about this race, and there's not. And I mean, news stations, they have their own. They're trying to keep up day by day with what's going on, so you can't. It's not a fault in them. But anyway, so I'm happy that there's something out there for people if people really want to have a real deep understanding of what's happening.
Well, look, that was a hell of a documentary that you put together. I really enjoyed it. I sat down just before I wrote the show on, I think it was Wednesday, and just listen to the whole thing. And while it had me so captivated, I had to stop and just go ahead and look at it. So folks, do go ahead and look for the film Run Like the Devil. Is it Run Like the Devil or Run Like a Devil?
Run like the devil.
Go check
It's
out.
Works like the devil, but yeah.
Yeah, go look up Run Like the Devil, and it's here in Houston as well. And as Steve Mims said, it's all over the state. And for those of you wherever you are in the country, including Texas, you can go to, what is the name of the organization? TUG?
There's a link on there called TUG. It's
TUG.
TUGG.
Right.
TUG. It's an on-demand cinema service.
Excellent. Well, look, it was my pleasure to have you, Steve, with us. I'm pretty sure you're going to have a full house here in Houston. I'm pretty sure you're going to have a full house everywhere because this documentary is simply well made and quite informative. So thank you so kindly for having been here.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day now.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Anyhow, folks, that was Steve Mims. And who's Steve Mims? That was the director, editor, cinematographer of the documentary Run Like the Devil, which chronicles the Texas Senate race between Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz. I saw the documentary myself. I got to tell you, it was absolutely well worth watching, well worth seeing. So please, if you're here in Houston, I think it's at the museum here in Houston. But again, I have a link in the blog to the showing here in Houston. But what I'm going to do is give you a link to the website that the director was speaking about, which is where you can find all the information of all the places where you can actually see the documentary. It was quite worth the effort. Have you guys been watching the charade on TV with regards to the Supreme Court? Oh, yeah. Now, if you guys have watched or read my recent blogs or listened to my recent shows both here or at KPFT 90.1 or elsewhere, you've noticed that I have not spoken a whole lot about the Supreme Court because I knew it was kabuki theater. I knew all along Kavanaugh will be approved, and there's one show that I did. I think it was one and only one show that I did, where I pretty much said, to hell with it, he's going to be on the Supreme Court, but it is our responsibility to make sure that there is a progressive sweep. And when I say a progressive sweep, I mean a progressive slaughter in the times that are coming up. And why do I say that? Because what we have to do is we have to supersede the Supreme Court. And when I say supersede, I'm not talking about doing anything unconstitutional. In fact, I'm talking about doing things that are definitely constitutional. The Supreme Court is only one branch of the government. What it means now is it's imperative. It's more imperative now that we get a progressive Senate, a progressive House, and a progressive president in 2020 so that we can supersede the Supreme Court. And I have to remind you guys of something. There are separations of powers in this country, right? What a lot of people don't understand is, yes, the Supreme Court interprets. The Supreme Court interprets the laws. But Congress, Senate, and the House passes the laws. The president approves the laws and executes the laws. If the president decides he doesn't like what the Congress passes, he vetoes that. And the Congress can, with a supermajority, override the veto. So in effect, there's a certain amount of power within the Congress to supersede what. In other words, if the Supreme Court comes and says abortion is absolutely illegal and unconstitutional, theoretically speaking, if you go ahead and have a supermajority in these different Congresses, right, you supersede the confounded law. I know, and what I'm saying is, it's hard to do. I'm not trying to make things more simple than they are. But what I'm trying to say, it is time for progressives to take over the legislative bodies, not only in the federal legislative bodies, but the state legislative bodies. And I'm not talking by just simple minorities, but majorities. Because what's happening here is they're trying to stack the United States Supreme Court with enough super right-wing and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but it applies. Right-wing neoliberal conservatives, that sounds funny, but it's true. Because we have no longer become a country that cares about its people, but instead one that simply follows the guidance, the rules of the corporations. And if some of those rules happen to help people, good for them. But if it doesn't help people but does help the corporations, good for them. And that is what Kavanaugh represents. If you notice what Cory Booker, or not Cory Booker, but Kamala Harris told, I think it was Cory Booker who told Kavanaugh. He said, from where he stood, every time there was a decision to be made, the decision always went in favor of the powerful. It always went in favor of the powerful. The guy is also against unions. The guy is against all these things that make a good liberal democracy. But he will be elected. And what's going to be the recourse? The recourse is that there must be super majorities, super progressive majorities that we should be working on. We should be working on super progressive majorities. That will ensure, when that becomes a reality, that will minimize the dangerous impact that they have, that the Supreme Court has. Remember, it's still separation of powers, and every branch of power of the government is co-equal. And if they're co-equal, no one can dominate the others. I'll take your questions if you have any after the blog of the week. But folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay. In these fast-moving times, I think it's okay now. I think we've mourned Senator Mccain. Senator Mccain got a great send-off with two excellent speakers, his daughter and President Obama. His daughter did a great number on Donald Trump, which was long overdue in that respect, in that venue. A few people gave her a hard time for hitting Donald Trump as hard as she did. Remember, she didn't even have to call his name for us to understand who she was referring to. And of course, President Obama was very gracious with John McCain, even though John McCain was a prick in his side. I mean, had John McCain been a more mavericky maverick, even ACA, I would say, would have been better. But anyhow, here's the blog of the week. John McCain, a hero, but unbalanced media coverage ignores harm he helped inflict on masses. And here we go. America gave Senator John McCain a beautiful send-off. In the process, they even dinged the president deservedly. In the process, the media was virtually entirely adoring. Unfortunately, the lack of appropriate balance denies Americans the knowledge of the parts of McCain that was damaging to the poor and to the middle class. Now, we justifiably gave John McCain a good send-off as a hero, but many of his policies have been detrimental to the masses. We must inform accurately. Many bloggers have been hesitant to rain on McCain's parade, but now that one of America's heroes is now in his permanent resting place, informing on some of these issues are required. It may make others reconsider their positions. In that light, Juan Cole's piece titled McCain Funeral, TV makes it all about personalities, elites all drilling, war cuts, etc. It is an essential read. He wrote the following. Cable television news shows and Cable television news shows and perhaps social media as well are misleading us by concentrating on personalities instead of issues. And the funeral of Senator John McCain was more of the same. I was once in the same room with John McCain at a DC think tank meeting and on the same side as he on an issue. I can't say I knew him, but clearly he was a great man and I was moved by the eulogies at the funeral. That isn't the point. That isn't the point, he says. The really big problems that the United States faces are not a matter of personality. They are structural. On structural matters, McCain voted with Trump 83% of the time. McCain was a third generation of naval officers, and he married an heiress worth $120 million. He was part of the American elite in an uncomplicated way, and he often contributed to our structural problems. He then explains, meaning Juan Cole then explains, the biggest challenge facing the, quote, open quotes, the biggest challenge facing the United States is the climate crisis. McCain, unlike Trump, was not a climate denialist, but he also wanted to undo the ban on offshore oil drilling and generally sided with the fossil fuel industry. He promoted green energy as well, but all of the above energy policies such as his is inevitably high carbon and bad for our climate. Another huge issue threatening our democracy is the concentration of the national wealth in fewer and fewer hands. The top 1% are taking home 20% of the wealth we generate every year. Repeating, the top 1%, 1 in 100, are taking 20% of everything. McCain was fine with Trump's tax giveaway to the rich, which will mean cuts in government services and thus represent a massive transfer of wealth from workers to the super rich. One reason for the concentration of wealth is in ever fewer hands is that workers' collective bargaining rights have been kneecapped by right-wing social policy. McCain was anti-union. And we all know that the union is the lack of unions is partially responsible for the demise of much of the middle class. We have a crisis of healthcare insurance in this country, which Trump is trying to worsen by destroying the ACA with 1,000 cuts. McCain was against Obamacare to begin with. It is true that he temporarily interfered in Trump's ongoing attempt to destroy the Affordable Care Act, but philosophically, McCain did not like it and did not vote for it when it was introduced. And here's the deal. Two things. I can imagine McCain got two joys out of that vote. One, he stuck it to Donald Trump. He stuck it to Donald Trump that Donald Trump came that close to to getting rid of several important provisions of ACA, in effect, gutting it. I can imagine McCain just seething and just happy that he was able to do that. But also, he knew something else. After a while, you have to have a heart. And to know that Donald Trump was the person repealing this thing or trying to repeal this thing, but had absolutely nothing to give the vast majority of Americans. He absolutely had nothing. It was about abolishment. And after abolishment, whoops, you're on your own. Good luck. If you can afford care, fine. If you can't, die. That is a policy that they had in place if that bill got chopped the way it was written in the bill. McCain saved the day. And so I think part of it was to stick it to Trump, but part of it is, man, you got to have a heart. You have to think about, what about those people? What's going to happen to those people without insurance? What's going to happen about those people that need care? You voted against that. It was tantamount to having no heart. But the reality is, we know the other side of the aisle, and I'm not talking about Republican people now. You're my friends, and I know you have a heart, and I know that what happens is many times you believe the crap these people tell you because somehow they give it plausibility. Somehow they give it some kind of plausibility. They give their evil plausibility, and somehow your ideological slant allows you to accept it. But McCain knew better. McCain said, I can stick it to the president and at the same time reduce my level of evil. So that's what he did. And he did the right thing. He did the right thing. So, McCain was against Obamacare to begin with, It is true that he temporarily interfered in Trump's ongoing attempt to destroy the Affordable Care Act, but philosophically, McCain did not like it and did not vote for it when it was introduced. Since 9/11, we've developed a forever war syndrome, and few can remember that in 1995, we weren't actively war fighting anywhere. We weren't in a war. We have big ongoing conflicts in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and are backing the Saudis in Yemen. McCain came to regret cheerleading for the Iraq war, but he remains till the end a proponent of constant exercise of U.S. military power abroad. Although his interventionism was often in the name of human rights, McCain had the same blind spots as other U.S. politicians. One 2015 headline said, McCain outraged at idea of Palestinian state. Read the entire piece and a few others that are more balanced. Check out the article, Why Can't Anyone Be Honest About John McCain's Legacy, for some more context as well. Let me tell you, folks, it is worth a read. This article is worth a read. It is so important for democracy. Folks, if you want to talk, telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Earlier, we had a Skype call who wanted to talk and they fell off. I don't know if you want to give us a call back. But for right now, what I'm going to go do is read what you guys have to say in this thread. And let me make sure and get it from the right. Okay, let's see. Don't have a lot of comments, but we have good luck, y'all. Like from Chase K. Escamilla, Maywood, hello, welcome aboard. Celia Burns, welcome aboard. Mike Cisak. Witness said Beto O'Rourke tried to drive away during 1998 DWI arrest. Okay, all right. I think both Steve Mims, the director of the documentary Run Like the Devil, said it right. Trump has made all of that academic. Yeah, 20-year-old or 25-year-old O'Rourke kind of skipped away or tried to skip away. Somebody claimed. You notice how they didn't say that it was written in that wasn't written in the police report. Somebody claimed they stopped him from running away. Okay, they claim they stopped him from running away. But you know what? What does it matter? We knowingly elected a crook as president. Do you think we should allow a childhood or a young person's proclivities to prevent them from serving after they've atoned, after they've done so much good, after they've paid their dues? No, I don't think so. So you know what? For all of you who are saying, "Oh, Beto," if all you can find on Beto O'Rourke is that he was driving drunk when he was young, paid his price to society, and then never did it again, most Americans would buy that because, after all, Donald Trump said he wasn't going to do a lot of things again, and he continues to do them. Worse, the man lies, and even his people now knows that he lies and he lies and he lies, and he's a president of the United States. There is absolutely no conservative now who has any ground to criticize any progressive run-in on almost anything if they're not in jail. In other words, if a progressive is running and is not in jail, conservatives, you need to go and start just talking philosophy. Forget about all the other stuff. Because what evangelical Christians have done, what the conservative movement has done, is they tied themselves to Donald Trump. And in tying yourselves to Donald Trump, you've tied yourself to moral depravity. And in tying yourself to moral depravity, you have no right, zero rights to talk about anything any progressive running for office is going to do, has done, once they're not in jail. You opened the door. You're the one who made it vogue. You're the one who made it okay to not have to be squeaky clean or have the semblance of being squeaky clean. So, all I can tell you guys is sorry. I'm so sorry, but Beto O'Rourke, in every respect, has more decency than all these guys out there. Let's see what else folks have to say. Let's see. Witness said, okay, the witness described how O'Rourke then lost control of his car and hit a truck, which sent his car towards oncoming lanes. Okay, and what does that have to do with Beto O'Rourke running for the Senate? A run that I think ultimately will be successful. We'll see. But yeah, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? Anyhow, folks, I haven't asked for my Ask It. For those of you who are listening, do remember this is a progressive show. What I'd like to ask you guys is remember that we are a progressive show that needs your support. So please go ahead and go to patreon.com. patreon.com/politics done right. You see, we bring you all kinds of folks onto the show. Earlier on, we had Steve Mims, who is the director of Run Like the Devil, which is a documentary about the Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz Senate race. It's an excellent documentary being shown here in Houston next week. Note again, we bring these folks into the fold. We bring people that don't get a whole lot of notoriety on standard media. Independent media is important if we're going to get the real message out. As you recall, Steve Mims, the director of the film, said he did the film thinking, well, let me do it because probably nobody else is going to do it. And then he said, and guess what? I was right. Nobody else did it. There are dozens of television stations out here with budgets, and not one of them did the type of expose that we had from Steve Mims, the director of Run Like the Devil. That should tell you something. That should tell you the importance of having independent media, because we are going to cover things that aren't normally covered, and for those that are covered, we're going to cover it in detail and in a manner that tells you the truth, not try to bend it towards the corporate state. So that is why, a lot of times we're misinformed, we're ill-informed, and we sit down and we wonder why. And the reason why is simple. It is simple. It is because we have lost control of our own media. We have allowed them to snow us. And why? Because we continue to pay. You pay your $100, $200, $300, some people, cable bill every month, right? You're paying for your own partial misinformation, because that cable channel has Fox News, it has CNN, which never goes in depth into anything. You have MSNBC, who never gets in depth, as they can't, because of who their advertisers are. We are only obligated to you. Our sole job is to tell you how things are. Of course, when it comes to politics done right, we have sort of a progressive slant. So progressive policies get, we're 100% factual. If you check the factual database that has all the websites or the news sites and the independent news and regular news, all of that, we're all conglomerated together. As far as politics done right and egbertowillies.com is concerned, our rating is high, meaning we are very accurate with what we report. And not only are we accurate, but we tell the truth. They do point out that we have a very left-leaning, which is the truth. I never ran from that. But it is important to note that we are here to give you information in a particular correct manner. So please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. If you are on Facebook Live, the link is right there inside of the header. If you are on Blog Talk Radio, just go to patreon.com/politics done right. The link should also be in the hub for the show. Again, that is patreon.com/politics done right. That is how we're going to make progress. I don't only talk about this, I follow the lead. I am a supporter of dailycoast.com, the biggest liberal site in the country. I'm a supporter of Democratic Underground, another very big website that shares progressive information. am also a donor to, as when I say supporter, I mean supporter. So I use supporter and donor interchangeably to Coffee Party USA, which is an organization trying to link communities together of all types, whether progressive, liberal, Democrat, and Republican, anarchist. What we try to do is bring things together at coffeepartyusa.com. Likewise, I gave to my local Democratic Party, and likewise, I gave to several other progressive institutions. Why? Because we know the other side have the Koch brothers with millions to roll them. We don't. We just have your individual pennies here and there. That's why I ask you to subscribe. Please subscribe to Politics Done Right at patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And you know what? We have bumper stickers to send you. If you give us your address and want a bumper sticker to put on your car, you can get a Politics Done Right bumper sticker for your car. And by subscribing, you can also get a e-copy of As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. Hold one second. I was supposed to show you the book today. This is you get an e-copy of this book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. A hard copy is one of the a little marginal higher membership. We're going to be, for those of you who've gotten that membership and haven't gotten your book, the reason why is that we're waiting for a certain volume to go ahead and get the books printed to make them affordable. So I know you're generous folk, so you understand the delay in getting the printouts of these books out. But again, folks, please go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And also, why don't you get to the level 4 though? As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. Let me tell you, folks, it's so important. It is so important. And let me just kind of put this up here a bit longer. It is so important that we understand. In this book, I cover a whole lot about how the economy works, how the current structure of our economy has screwed many Americans, and it is a very, very easy to understand book. It's the first book that I wrote. I'm currently writing another book. I'm going to be putting the table of contents of that book out pretty soon when I send out my next big mailer asking folks to subscribe to Politics Done Right. The other book is going to be out. I'm thinking early next year, but for the folks that are subscriber, every chapter that I write is going to be online, and you are going to be privy to the chapter as I write them. Folks, it's going to be, I'm hoping to not only complain like we do on a lot of these shows, but offer how it could actually be. What could we really do to solve these problems? So anyhow, go to patreon.com/Politics Done Right and support us. That is how we make a change. The progressive side of the equation does need your support. Okay, let's see. Michael D. Newton. Few saved me from Scotta's testimony. Okay, let's see what else I have here. Zach, let's see. Maywood. That's true. John McCain might have come down on the wrong side of things sometimes, but at least he did them for good reasons. Yes, unlike some others who may have done the right thing, like getting us out of the TPP, but for all the wrong reasons. True. And Mike Cesek says the evangelical right knows that it is okay to separate a person's personal life with a political life because that is what the left does, since the political objectives of the left is more important than any criminal acts people do. I wish you had remembered that during the Clinton years. I wish you had remembered that during the Obama years, because Obama is the cleanest president we've had probably in the history of this nation. He knew he had to be clean. And he knew he had to put out all the things that he did just to preempt what the onslaught was going to be. And boy, did he do a good job. That's why he won. But anyhow, folks, we are coming to the end of the program. So what I'd like to ask you to do again is please do remember to support Politics Done Right. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right, and show that you are going to support independent media. Independent media. And you know what else comes with the fringe benefits? You get a bumper sticker if you want one. You can also get the Politics Done Right book if you go ahead and subscribe at that level. Look, here's an important thing. We can make a difference. The other side is betting that we are so darn scared and so impotent and feel like we don't have the value, a value set, or that we are not worthy that we won't fight. For those of you who listen to my program, you know I think the most powerful value we have is ourselves, and that we can really go out there and do it. So folks, please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. We're at the end of the program. So my name is Egberto Willies, and this is Politics Done Right. You know how I'm going to end this. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.